Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, jointly organized by CEDR, the Conference of European Directors of Roads, and PIARC, the World Road Association, on the topic of intelligent access. My name is Konstantinos Andreopoulos. I work for CEDR, and today I will have the pleasure to take you through most of this online event. We will start with an introduction on intelligent access and the two organizers of the event, CEDR and PIARC, and then continue with 5 pre-recorded presentations on intelligent access from experts based in different parts of the world. The second part of the webinar will be a discussion with 8 panelists, also experts on intelligent access. At the end, we will summarize today's event and discuss possible steps forward. Before we actually begin, I want to kindly ask you to pay attention to the following practical information. The goal of this webinar will mainly be to collect experiences and issues. Please note that the second webinar in the second semester of this year will take a closer look at the specific aspects of intelligent access. Please remember to keep your microphone muted and your video switched off when you don't speak during the event. If you have any questions for one of the speakers or panel members, put the question in the chat and we will pick it up during the panel sessions, if appropriate, or after the webinar. Finally, all presentations, comments, and questions, as well as the results of the panel discussions, will be incorporated in the proceedings and circulated to all of you after the meeting. Now let's see what intelligent access means. Intelligent access means that access to the public road of heavy-duty vehicles is monitored and potentially controlled with the help of telematics. Intelligent access is not only about technology, but also about access policies to the public road. Intelligent access is not only a digitization process, but also a fundamental social transformation. There are various needs that may underlie all this, and some example of this you can see here on this slide, such as how to control the compliance with access requirements, or how to get a better insight into the use of the road for improvement of asset management, how to create trust with authorities and citizens when introducing vehicles with higher safety risks, or how to respond more adequately to changing weather or traffic conditions. In a nutshell, we can say that intelligent access is having the right vehicle on the right road at the right time. Now, as mentioned in the beginning, today's organizers are CEDR and PIARC. CEDR is the Organization of National Road Administrations in Europe since 1988, with the aim to promote excellence in the management of roads. More than 30 European NRAs are currently engaged within CEDR, which has at the moment 13 different working groups and 14 research programs. The specific CEDR activity dealing with intelligent access is Working Group 3.11 on road freight transport, which monitors developments and the exchange of knowledge regarding heavy-duty vehicles, mainly in relation to constructional safety, greening, and the management of assets and traffic. Now, PIARC was founded in 1909 as a non-profit, non-political association. It is, of course, a global forum for exchange of knowledge and experience on roads and road transport. PIARC consists of 125 member governments, as well as regions, groups, and individuals. There is 1,200 international experts and more than 20 technical committees active and task forces within PIARC. The specific activity in PIARC dealing with our topic of today is the Technical Committee 2.3 on freight, which deals with the greening of freight transport, the application of new technologies on freight transport and logistics, as well as best practices, monitoring and regulation to reduce overloading and all associated infrastructure damage on road networks. Now, having said all this, I believe we can already proceed with our 5 pre-recorded presentations from experts all over the world. Our first presentation today will be delivered by Mr. Salvador Saavedra from Mexico. Mr. Saavedra is the founder and the member in various boards at national and international councils and committees, involved in mainly standardization in road freight transport. The title of his presentation is Opportunities for Improvement on the Revision of the Weights and Dimensions Regulation in Mexico. So now let's hear Mr. Saavedra.
Hello, everybody. I am Salvador Saavedra in Mexico. Today, I want to talk to you about the opportunities for improvement using Intelligent Access Program on the revision of the Weights and Dimension Regulation in Mexico. We will talk about the scope of the Weights and Dimension Regulation, the additional requirements of this regulation, the trends that have existed since its inception in 1997 to today, the opportunities we see to improve the regulation by using the tools of Intelligent Access Program, and also the opportunities to improve using performance-based standards on this regulation. You should know that our NOM 012 was published in December of 2017, and thus, it is by law in Mexico, it has to be revised after 5 years. So this year, by year end, it has to be revised. Not necessarily changed, but just revised. The scope of the regulation is to set the specifications for weight, dimensions, and capacity of the vehicles for public and private transport over the federal roads per type of roads. So far, it considers 26 vehicle configurations and 5 types of federal roads. The regulation also includes several conditions that vehicles and transport companies must comply, such as it sets the vehicle configurations. It includes safety devices for various types of configurations, though it does not include its specifications. It provides the possibility for transit restrictions during holidays. Double trailer configurations require specific authorization, and specific vehicle requirements for double trailer configurations are included without any specifications except for the minimum horsepower, torque, and for the engines and drive axle capacity. Specific transit conditions for double trailer configurations, such as maximum speed, left lane restricted, lights on, distance to lead vehicles, are also included. Specific driver requirements for double trailer configurations, driver's license, expertise, and hours of service log are needed. Double trailer configurations must be equipped with GPS, and connectivity permits may be granted instead to transit on lower specification roads going to or out of manufacturing sites or distribution centers, providing that the certain requirements for the vehicles and transit conditions are met. Special rules on weights and dimensions are included for hauling new trucks, cement mixers, cement pumps, and car transporters. This is how the weights have changed in the 2 main configurations. The first one being a single tractor 3-axle with a semi-trailer of 2 axles, and the double trailer configuration, tractor with 3 axles, semi-trailer with 2 axles, and the trailer with 4 axles. And the weights have been on a base, that is what's the standard, let's say, and differentiated vehicles, that is when it includes additional specifications. At first in 1997, they were weight related. They were actually, in the case of all of them, air ride suspension, and in the case of the double trailer configuration, it was needed the auxiliary brake or endurance brake. As said, the standard was revised in 2008. Safety related specifications were added, such as ABS, a safety change for double trailers, special type of brakes, and so on. In 2014, some political things happened that the higher weight was allowed for the single configuration for all of them without meeting any weight or safety related specifications. And in 2017, those weight and safety related specifications were a must for double trailer configurations. Which opportunities we see in 2022 revision? We see that the Intelligent Access Program consideration should be seen as a low investment action to improve enforcement, as the investment is distributed among all the chain of the transportation ecosystem. The GPS requirement should be turned on to be the backbone of an Intelligent Access Program, and some weight and safety-related vehicle specifications should be changed into PBS as it is simpler to understand. Where we see the main opportunities is in the connectivity permits, and in the connectivity permits, we see the paper permits to be changed from paper to electronic permits. Stating routes and kilometers in paper should no longer be an issue, but going into geofencing the authorized routes. Permit by company, tractor, or group of tractors, which exist now, should be changed into a cloud-based system so that everything is in the cloud and not just on a paper. And physical verification of whether the tractor is going into an unauthorized route, which nowadays is overseen by the police. And if there are enough police, they can look at it, they can enforce it, changing to GPS reporting when transit on a non-authorized routes exists. That's what, in the case of connectivity, where we see the opportunities. In the case of vigilance of critical transit conditions, speeding control on certain locations by means of ITS or police radars is the way of doing that. A patrol with a policeman trying to catch somebody at speeding. When we would use IAP, we can track speeding or have speeding control on all routes by GPS monitoring and reporting. Dedicated weight station at random or weight operations is the way we do it. We have 9 weight stations all over the country, and from time to time we have weight operations on certain highways. We could change to onboard weight systems, handwritten hours of service reports. We could have hours of service registered by ELDs. And in the case of PBS, for safer vehicles, we can change from just the HP and torque of the engines to startability and gradability performance. Instead of just saying they have to have auxiliary braking system, we can have a downhill vehicle performance at a given GBW or GCW. And where we don't have any requirements for stability on double trailer configurations, we can go to a rollover performance on double trailer configuration, such as the standard we have developed in Mexico is in the process of being published, where we tested the second trailer with or without the rollover prevention system, and with A-type dolly or H-type dolly, H-type being a double drawbar dolly. So we see lots of opportunities, and we shall discuss them later on. Thank you very much.
So a big thank you to Mr. Saavedra for this presentation. Our next speaker is Miss Alejandra Efron, who's an associate professor at the University Argentina de la Empresa, and the topic of this presentation will be steps towards EAP national implementation in Uruguay's VADs regulation. So let's hear from Miss Alejandra now, Efron.
I'd like to present how Uruguay has regulated and implemented high-performance vehicles. They call them VAD in Spanish, in a simple but very thorough way. And the steps taken towards future IAP. So the project VAD started to take shape when the Ministry of Transport, the MTOP, was requested by the forestry sector about the possibility of authorizing longer and heavier vehicles. So the ministry thought it was a good idea to open that possibility for other industries, but with a framework that would reward good practice and protect the road network. So other operators also requested just 3 tons more for conventional semi-trailers, from 45 to 48 tons. And these new configurations requested just provided the perfect opportunity for discussing novel ways to authorize, monitor, sanction, or reward heavy vehicle access to the Uruguayan infrastructure, but based on the heavy vehicle's performance, its road interaction, and the transport operator or shipper's voluntary participation. So this presentation talks about the steps taken to form a strong base towards a potential IIP implementation and discuss its future steps. So if we would like to say which are the steps, the first one, we would say it's an agreement among all the stakeholders that the recommendations from the study will be accepted. And this step is very important. And to achieve it, the ministry hired a team of independent and well-respected consultants. And I still remember a discussion, for example, over speed limiters. However, the results were uncontested. And so the speed limiters for the new vehicles are in. The second step is the feasibility of vehicle configurations, but via comparative studies. Comparative studies allow to measure the positive or negative impact that introducing new configurations would have on the safety and the road infrastructure compared to existing fleet, and then recommend the conditions to approve this new configuration circulation. These are some of this is the reference vehicle, and for example, BrAle Forestry, a triple, which was requested, and BrAle with 2 40-feet containers that is on the other side of Uruguay and Argentina. So as an example of these comparative studies, we can see these PBS comparative report results of LRT, or dynamic load transfer ratio. This is a performance standard that helps understand how the vehicle would perform after a sudden maneuver. So from the study, the mass and speed were seen as 2 of the parameters to enforce compliance. And for both, today it can be tackled by technological devices. And we can see here in the graph, the simulations were done, the comparisons were done at 88 kilometers an hour and 110, just to see how the speed would work. A very important note, these comparisons are done without any stability control devices, just on how the vehicle is. So the regulation for the new configurations, it was decided that complicated rules makes compliance very difficult. So the current regulation for conventional vehicles was maintained. However, for the new requests and the steps towards intelligent access policies, 2 different regulations were drawn, which include compulsory telematic devices for all elements, tractor and all trailers. And these devices include tags with RFID technology for vehicle identification, recording of speeds, driving time, weights, and equipment on board that allows for GPS vehicle tracking. So what are the next steps? Well, how are we going to use that information? because the regulation specifies that at the request of the MTOP, the transport companies will provide online access to the geolocation data or to the records of previous periods. Now, currently, monitoring is being self-regulated by the companies, but in the next steps, it would be discussing and defining how the data requested by law will be handled, processed, and protected, particularly commercial sensitive information, how this data will become information to be transported in reports for future sustainable transport. And the regulations currently stipulate diverse strict sanctions, as well as incentives. For example, it allows for percentages of overload in different axles. And really the high number of requests, of VAD requests, in particular for the 48-ton semi-trailer, has shown that there are transport operators and shippers who really want to do the right thing by the community. So thanks, gracias por su atención. Thanks very much for your attention. And any questions can be forwarded. Thank you very much.
So after Ms. Efron's presentation, we will continue with the presentation from Mr. Gavin Hill from Australia, who's a general manager and strategy and delivery at TCA Transport Certification Australia. The title of Mr. Hill's presentation is Intelligent Access in Australia, a short history with insights. So let's now hear Mr. Hill. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Gavin Hill from Transport Certification Australia. Thanks for inviting me to present. Over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to provide a very brief overview of intelligent access and its history in Australia. I want to provide a bit of a history in terms of where we started and where we are today. And I will say, although I'm presenting on behalf of Australia and its history with intelligent access, I do want to acknowledge right from the very beginning of this that I really am standing on the shoulders of giants. And when I say that, I mean there has been a groundswell of actors and stakeholders that have taken part on the story of intelligent access in Australia. And I want to just acknowledge everyone from policymakers to legislators to technical developers to regulators and road managers who have all played a part in shaping what we know as intelligent access in Australia today. So without further ado, it's interesting and noteworthy to acknowledge where this concept of intelligent access originally emerged from. And we have to go back to the mid-1990s to understand the genesis of intelligent access. And there were three sort of related activities that came together around this time. The first being the widespread use of GSM technologies, which enabled the wireless exchange of data from vehicles. And we also saw a major shift in how global positioning system technologies out of the United States were being used. And this, the removal of selective availability was instrumental in making GPS-based technologies, which are now widespread through many, many devices, including our smartphones, available for civilian uses. But around the mid-1990s, we also saw in Australia a renewed push for heavy vehicle productivity reforms. And this gave a renewed push to talk about the challenges that come with productivity, safety, and infrastructure management and sustainability. And from that, 3 policy gateways emerged, which I'll go through quickly, just so you understand the context and what really moved intelligent access from being a concept to a regulatory legislated program in the space of less than half a decade. So these gateways really did shape heavy vehicle reforms, and we're still benefiting from that original policy thinking in the mid-1990s. The first gateway was, there was a policy objective to minimise pavement wear, and that led to the introduction of things like road-friendly suspension and also innovative vehicle designs like performance-based standards. The second gateway was around improving compliance, and this was putting greater emphasis on the role of drivers, transport operators, and more broadly, other parties in the supply chain to contribute to improved compliance outcomes on the road network. Now, quite simply, road agencies and regulators have better confidence and are more willing to move policy levers if they've got a good, strong, compliant industry using the road network. And so this provides a central pillar of the assurance model which underpin these reforms. And just extending that thought further, policymakers were looking for innovative ways to match vehicles to roads. And this led to the concept of intelligent access. And as I was saying on my previous slide, this confluence of technology availability, the push for productivity, and the need to sustainably manage our road networks in Australia came together at an opportune time. I won't go through the next couple of slides in detail, but I just want to give you an insight into how quickly intelligent access moved based on the policy impetus to do more with less. And that really was the tenor of what occurred between the mid-1990s and the late 2000s. There was a push to open up productivity and access, which led to a national project being established to look at the feasibility of intelligent access. And that started back in 2001. And importantly, it wasn't just about the technical feasibility, it covered all dimensions of what would make intelligent access feasible. Now, in 2005, besides ministers back in 2003 in Australia approving the feasibility study and the outcomes of it, and also the implementation roadmap, this was actually turbocharged in 2005 when there was a renewed push again to actually introduce higher productivity vehicles onto the road network. And this brought forward a whole range of activities that were earmarked for a later time. But in 2005, a lot happened. None more so than the establishment and funding of a new national body called Transport Certification Australia. I'm going to skim over the last decade here very quickly because a lot has happened and I don't have enough time to go through this in detail. But intelligent access, once it was introduced, has never stood still. It's constantly evolved to meet the evolving needs of policymakers, road agencies, regulators, and end users. And as technology has evolved and as policy needs have evolved, so has the concept of intelligent access in Australia. In 2018, TCA was asked to bring forward a series of improvements and advancements to what we know as intelligent access so that it can be prepared for what's coming over the next 10 years. Those major improvements that were approved in 2018 are now well enshrined. They've been introduced, And we've got technology providers, transport operators, and all stakeholders benefiting from those improvements. But what's more, we're right now in the middle of major policy and legislative reforms in this country. And one of the key pillars of these policy and legislative reforms, when it comes to heavy vehicles and other vehicles, not just heavies, but it's contemplating the wider use of technology and data for a range of reforms over the next 2 decades. And this doesn't relate primarily or exclusively to productivity reforms, but it relates to how we can use technology and data in vehicles to introduce a whole range of new operating models to improve outcomes on the road transport system. Now, I've got a few slides here, and I'm going to have to go through them relatively quickly, but I will share this slide pack to anyone who would like to have it. But they say necessity is the mother of invention. And if we go back to the mid-1990s and what's taken place since, we saw an alignment of objectives. Even though they were presented in different ways, we saw a broad church of different actors who wanted to do more, and technology and data was a way to achieve that. Intelligent access was the mechanism that we sought alignment between different stakeholders to drive this forward. And these different perspectives can be observed today in the way that stakeholders in Australia and globally refer to intelligent access. And depending on where you sit, you can have a very different discussion depending on what their motivations are. Barriers and drivers are key to this discussion. And again, time doesn't permit me to go through this in detail, but here are some key points that I reflected on over my journey over the last couple of decades in this space. The most important one, and I'll leave you with this thought, and this is my final thought, you need to establish a strong value proposition for every actor and every party that's operating in this concept that we call intelligent access. Whatever the use case is, whatever the policy challenge is, you need to strike a value proposition or a value chain that provides a benefit for everyone involved. And if I can suggest any piece of advice to my colleagues around the globe, it's to look at that first. And if you can't strike a positive value proposition, go back, keep looking at it, keep talking to stakeholders, and don't do anything until you've got, a strong, compelling case, which will allow you to progress trials and pilots and build up confidence, and most importantly, to build a coalition of willing stakeholders to be cheerleaders for intelligent access. So with that, I will leave it there. I could talk much more about some of the challenges and the issues we've faced, but I do thank you for listening to me, and I wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gavin, for this presentation. Our next presenter is Miss Caroline Mays from the United States, who's a director in Texas, and her presentation is entitled Intelligent Freight Mobility and Access in Texas. So let's now hear Miss Mays.
Hi, my name is Caroline Mays, and I'm with the Texas Department of Transportation, and I serve as Director of Freight, Trade, and Connectivity. Today, I'll be talking to you about intelligent freight mobility in Texas, and I have 3 components to my presentation. The first one is the Texas Freight Network Technology and Operations Plan. The second one, I'll be discussing the Texas Connected Freight Corridor Project, and then the third one will be Interstate 10 Corridor Truck Parking Availability System. So the first one, as I mentioned, the Texas Freight Network and Technology Operations Plan. Why did we do a network technology and operations plan? Three main key objectives. One was really to better understand the needs, challenges, and gaps on the Texas multimodal freight network. Then the second one was to identify the technology innovations that could help facilitate and enhance freight mobility and network operations throughout Texas. And finally, another key main objective was to really develop a blueprint for deploying emerging technologies on the Texas freight network, with really the main purpose of facilitating safe and efficient movement and mobility and access for freight throughout the state of Texas. One of the key elements of the plan was to build on and leverage the existing Texas ITS program. As you can see on the maps, we have 7 traffic management centers and over 2,700 CCTV cameras and over 980 DMS signs, as well as 2,500 vehicle detection stations throughout the state. The plan identified several strategies as outlined here, and some of the strategies are already underway, like truck parking, smart work zones, as well as fiber optic cable system expansions. And then we also have a lot of strategies that have moved into concept of operations, the ones with the check marks. So next, I will discuss some of the actionable strategies that were developed as part of the Freight Network Technology Operations Plan. The first one is the High Resolution Freight Traveler Information System. As you can see here, really the main objective here was to develop a statewide data collection program that can provide really high resolution freight traveler information system throughout the state. And really the goal here was to address the need to improve quality information for the trucking industry throughout the Texas freight network. The second actionable strategy that came out of the plan was smart freight connectors. And here really the quick overview was to deploy freight specific ITS technologies such as truck priority signals on the critical freight network throughout the state, and really with the goal of, again, enhancing and improving mobility, safety, efficiency, and access for trucks throughout our transportation system. The third actionable strategy was AV infrastructure and connected signing and data. And here really, again, was to look at how can we implement specific AV infrastructure requirements for smart roadside signs with the goal of really providing better information on roadway environment to improve efficiency and safety for automated freight vehicles in Texas. And here it summarizes what I've talked about, a conceptual framework for integrated services and strategies for the network, where it outlines all the strategies and how it integrates into the entire ITS system throughout the state. The next component of my presentation covers the Texas Connected Freight Corridors project. And in this project, the main vision, the vision for the project was really to implement a connected vehicle technology to enable safe and efficient movement of goods throughout Texas key corridors, simply known as the Texas Triangle indicated in the map here. We have several corridors in this region that are heavily traveled by freight in the state. The project had 5 key goals. The first goal is certainly to improve safety. Safety is a priority for us at TxDOT, but also throughout the state. Enhance freight mobility and access through these corridors. The third goal is to reduce environmental impacts, and the fourth goal is advance technology. And then the final goal is to promote economic opportunities throughout the state. As part of the project, several connected vehicle applications were identified and put into 3 tiers or buckets, as you can see here. But the ones highlighted in the lighter blue are the ones that have been selected to be developed, which are work zone warning, queue warning, wrong way drivers, advanced travel information system, trade signal priority, and road weather warning. And the others, although it doesn't show that they were selected, but we're still moving forward with some of them, including truck parking, which I'll talk about later. What were the expected benefits of this project? One was really to gain access to near real-time travel information system on work zones, traffic queues, alternate routes, and wrong-way drivers. And the second one was really to achieve proof of concept before we make any significant investments in connected vehicle technologies, but also to contribute to a model that will set an example for future AV deployment and then development of national standards. So the final component of my presentation covers the Interstate I-10 corridor truck parking availability system. And as you can see in this map, this is a joint project between 4 US states, California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. And this study is being led by Texas, and it was funded by a US DOT grant. And the main purpose is really to provide real-time truck parking availability information to trucks drivers driving this corridor. This shows kind of conceptually what, how this would work. First is a detection that would detect whether a vehicle is parked in a parking spot and provide that information to a third party that would process the data and then deliver that data to truck drivers through signs on the roadways, but also through a traveler information system. So the data would also be distributed and communicated in several ways. So one, as I mentioned, the truck parking signs. The second one will be through smartphone apps and travel apps. And then in-cab integration with the truck drivers within the truck, and then of course integrated into our statewide traveler information system known as Drive Texas. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
So after the presentation from Ms. Mays from the United States, we will now have our final presentation from Ms. Loes Aarts from the Netherlands, who's a senior advisor in Rijkswaterstaat in the Netherlands and also a co-chair of CEDR's working group Road Freight Transport. The title of Loes' presentation is Intelligent Access Initiatives in Europe. So let's now hear what Loes has to say on this topic. Thank you.
Dear listeners, I'm going to take you into what is happening in Europe in the field of intelligent access. My name is Loes Aarts. I'm a senior advisor at Rijkswaterstaat, which is the National Road Authority, part of the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management in the Netherlands. This presentation is structured in the same way as the topics of the panel discussion in the second part of this webinar. For each of the topics, I will take an initiative in Europe as an example. These are the topics. Topics are taking advantage of opportunities, the promises of intelligent access. Are we ready for intelligent access? The organization of trust. Intelligent access means that access of heavy-duty vehicles is monitored and potentially dynamically controlled with the help of telematics. As mentioned in the introduction, this can be based on many motives. In this presentation on initiatives with intelligent access in Europe, a diverse number of motives are passing by. The first topic, taking advantage of opportunities. Italy. This topic is about opportunities that can be seized to introduce some form of intelligent access for a particular application. In Italy, the automation of the authorization process for exceptional transport was the reason for the introduction of intelligent access. The initiating body, ANAS, National Road Authority of Italy, did not aim to introduce intelligent access. The aim of the automation was to make it easier for transport companies to apply for an authorization or exemption. Part of the authorization is a legal obligation to report the start of the journey. Because the process was automated, registration was no longer possible by telephone. Instead, carriers of abnormal loads must install an application on the phone. They activate the application at the start of the journey. This allows the vehicle to be tracked during the journey. As a road authority, ANAS can see real-time all abnormal loads transport that are on the way. There is also insight into compliance with the access requirements with regard to the route and the time. ANAS has no authority to ask for data on axle and total weights. The second example is from Austria. No form of intelligent access has been introduced in Austria, but the situation in the country would lend itself perfectly to do this. A few years ago, 13 traffic control locations were set up along the motorway network. Control teams with different disciplines always choose a different location so that an inspection cannot be anticipated in advance. All passing freight vehicles are required to go through traffic control. For the authorities, this is quite an investment in terms of maintenance of the systems and manpower. It's a big burden for the companies. Those who obey the law are taxed just as much as a much smaller portion that flout the rules. The incentive for transport companies to participate in intelligent access is therefore considerable. Last example, UVAR. UVAR stands for Urban and Regional Vehicle Access Regulations. An UVAR zone is a zone, usually in cities, where restrictions apply to different vehicle types. The access restrictions often relate to protecting historic inner cities, improving air quality or reducing the amount of traffic. UVARs are a vital part of the strategy to achieve clean, safe and sustainable urban mobility. Setting UVAR zones is an excellent opportunity to introduce intelligent access. The UVAR Exchange Research Project is funded by the European Commission. This research project aims to exchange knowledge and experiences with smart enforcement strategies. In example, not only intelligent access, but also systems with camera surveillance in the different countries participating in the project. An important part is the pursuit of a national point of access for the various UVARs in the country. Not so much to prevent the patchwork of access rules, but to standardize the variety of data forms and communication protocols. The second topic is the promises of intelligent access. This concerns the benefits of implementing intelligent access for the various participants involved. In the above examples, intelligent access only appears to be a system for road authorities and enforcement officers to check compliance with access restrictions more effectively. Such a one-sided interpretation of the concept deprives you of the opportunity to allow the mutual relationships between the stakeholders involved to evolve from opposing parties to cooperation in the social and commercial interests. The data needed to organize processes around access to the public road more dynamically is available. However, this data is contained in systems that have different owners and are not always, but increasingly better, compatible, let alone that parties are willing to share the data. Fear of loss of market share and privacy and competition sensitivities play a role here. However, the situation is changing. Both authorities and companies are increasingly interested in sharing data, because only in this way the system can be optimized for the benefit of everyone. In the not too distant future, a situation will arise where you will price yourself out of the market if you don't share data. But we are not yet there. Also the question, what could we do that they can't, and vice versa? How can traffic management and logistics grow together more closer? An example of this topic within this topic is Estonia. In Estonia, the starting point is the intelligent access Intelligent access is part of the national strategy to improve the traffic management information service. The target group is the so-called VLOOP-RIS system, was in the first instance of the so-called VLOOP-RIS system was in the first instance the 52-48 tons year-round timber transport. As a result of climate change, periods of thaw and frost in Estonia are changing faster. Therefore, the possibility of some ice roads is less predictable. To limit damage to the infrastructure, prevent accidents, and enable transport companies to better anticipate changing circumstances, Estonia has introduced a form of intelligent access. The approach here was not to ensure that users of the road comply with the access requirements, but related more to traffic management. It's the weather conditions that impose restrictions on road access, and a more dynamic system is needed to be able to anticipate this in good time. Heavy commercial vehicles are tracked by means of GPS. Transport companies must cooperate with this because it's part of an exemption. If a route is impassable and people are on their way anyway, this is clear to the authorities and sanctions can be followed. The next example is the Aeroflex project. That's a large-scale multi-year European Horizon 2020 research project that concluded last September with a great event at the ZF test track in Gießen, Germany. The objective of the project was to develop and demonstrate new aerodynamic and flexible trucks for next generations of long-distance road transport. The project was unique because it took into account the logistical and social context and had an eye for the way in which the innovations could also be made legally possible. For the latter goal, Aeroflex is fully committed to intelligent access. During the duration of the project, Aeroflex took the dissemination and development of knowledge about the concept of intelligent access a significant step further. Permanent monitoring of the vehicles could reassure road authorities that the vehicles are complying with the access requirements and is therefore a means, in mutual interest, to facilitate the implementation of innovative vehicle concepts. As with UVAR, Aeroflex emphasizes the importance of harmonization. High-capacity vehicles are mainly suited for longer distances, and within Europe, that quickly means crossing borders. The aim is to prevent each country from setting up its own systems. Aeroflex does not mention national points of access, but sees a coordinating role for the European Commission. The third topic is, are we ready for intelligent access? This topic is about the extent to which stakeholders are ready to introduce some form of intelligent access. And then it specifically concerns knowledge, organization, and technology. First is, I would like to take you to the experiences that have been gained in the Netherlands so far with the intelligent access special road transport pilots. Special road transport refers to all heavy commercial vehicles that present a special safety risk. For example, vehicles with deviating dimensions and weights, or the transport of dangerous goods. The National Road Authority, Rijkswaterstaat, is initiator. The pilot started in September 21 and will run for 1 year. An invitation to tender was put out to the market for the pilots. Participation is on voluntary basis. 2 consortia were selected from the responses, consisting of 1 or more service providers and 1 transport company. They will collect a large amount of data during 6 months. The data remains in the hands of the companies. The service provider ensures that the data is made available to the authorities on an aggregated level. An acute report is only made to the police in the event of serious safety risks for which threshold values are agreed. One consortium consists of a service provider that operates on the side of shippers and has built up experience with the digital waybill, the ECMR. An extra field is created on this consignment node for intelligent access. An aspect that we encountered in the pilot, is that the application of privacy legislation is a relatively new task that is also under development. And I'm now going to mention a lot of issues that we encountered during the pilot. So what we have seen is that each public authority tends to look at its own territory. Many executive public authorities are operationally oriented and find it difficult to look a little further ahead. Public organizations have to compete with business in a tight labor market for privacy advisors. There is no such thing as a pilot phase for privacy legislation. The police emergency number 112 cannot receive messages, only phone calls. How can you collect data from exceptional vehicles in all kinds of non-standard configurations? Topic 4 is the organization of trusts. Trust is at the heart of the intelligent access concept. It touches on concerns of all stakeholders involved about misuse of data. Trust in this context refers not only to sharing the data with the authorities, Big Brother, but also to the sharing of potentially competitively sensitive information, or to the risk that data could be hacked. How secure is the exchange of data? For authorities, it's about the degree to which they can trust that the data will not be manipulated. That brings me to the last example. Sweden has been researching intelligent access for a number of years and has built up a great deal of expertise in this area. To this end, they have had intensive cooperation with Australia. It was previously intended that intelligent access would be applied to the introduction of the high-capacity vehicle duo trailer. However, no decision has yet been taken on the admission of this high-capacity vehicle. The realization of a pilot was encountered privacy legislation. The pilot will be launched shortly with intelligent access for abnormal transport loads. The pilot is in the design phase. In the pilot, data will be collected about route, speed, and time within specifically marked areas, geofenced. Real-time decisions by authorities that influence the course of the journey can also be passed on to the vehicle. Here too, the data remains the property of the transport companies, and there is a service provider that acts as an intermediary. The system is called Digital Self-Declaration, Privacy by Design. This is an overview of the initiatives in Europe. So 2 examples are already in operation. There are 2 pilots and 2 large research projects. That brings me to the last slide. The 4 topics are central to the panel discussion that will follow shortly after the break. I'm curious what the viewpoints are of the panel members. Thank you for listening, and I wish you a pleasant continuation of this webinar.
Thank you very much, Loes, for this comprehensive presentation on where we stand in Europe with regards to intelligent access. Now, having watched all our 5 presentations, I believe we can take a 5 minutes break before we continue with the second part of our webinar, which is the panel discussion. So see you all back here in 5 minutes from now. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We will now continue with the second part of our webinar, the panel discussion, to be moderated by Martin Ruesch from PIARC. I will be introducing our moderator, Martin, who's head of transport and traffic consulting at Zurich and member of the management board there, and who's, as I said already, chair of the PIARC Technical Committee 2.3 on freight. Martin will be moderating our panel today. The panel will be divided in 2 groups. So in group number 1, we will have Mr. Ton Klein representing the European side, and also Mr. Anthony Laras, Mr. Andrew Rossington, and Mr. Roger Sake from Australia. In group 2, we will have Ansel Globokar from Slovenia, Mr. Gavin Hill from Australia, our colleague Marcel Otto from the Netherlands, and also Ifet Turken representing the European side as well. So now, having said all this, I will immediately give the floor to Martin to launch the discussion. So Martin, over to you, and thank you very much for everything.
Thank you very much, Konstantinos, for introducing me and to the panelists. I'm happy to welcome you now to the panel discussion on intelligent access application, which is divided in 2 parts, as Konstantinos already said. In the first part, we will discuss about the opportunities of intelligent access application and the readiness for implementation. And in the second part, we will discuss about the benefits of intelligent access and the conditions for trust. So the panelists of the first round represent mostly the private sector's view. So we have Roger Sake, Anthony Laras, Andrew Rossington, and also Ton Klein. And I would like to ask the panelists to keep the answers and statements short, so we can have different views and we can cover different topics. And also please raise the hand if you're ready to answer the questions. So the first topic is about opportunities and the different forms of intelligent access applications. So my first question to the panelists is, which intelligent access applications are promising from your point of view? Are they covering only new situations, or can they be applied also for existing situations? Who would like to make the start?
Anthony Laras would happily make the start, Martin.
Yes, Anthony, please.
Thank you. And to all my colleagues, good evening, good morning. I would just like to say that I believe that the applications of intelligent access are retrospective. There is no doubt that we can apply them to existing transport applications as well as future applications. From my experience in Australia, we've been able to use intelligent access to assess the current state of access and use intelligent access to improve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Other views, perspective on this question? Maybe Ton Klein, please. You're still muted.
This is better, I think.
Yes.
Sorry,
like
Martin.
No problem.
Being director of ESTA, the exceptional transport side of things, of course, my perspective is first of all, from a European perspective, but also from an exceptional transport perspective. And I think particularly in our branch, intelligent access can give us a lot of opportunities for harmonizing and enhancing the permitting system, which is needed to drive exceptional transport. But having said that, it also gives me a worry, because we know in Europe that we have an array of rules and regulations all over countries, which are very, very much different from country to country and even from region to region. And much like we have seen when permitting applications were put on the internet, we didn't get a better system. We only got an automated worse system. And I'm afraid that if we have intelligent access, if I now see that Italy is already doing this for exceptional transport on their own, we will in future have 25 different intelligent access systems in Europe. And this is something I think we should prevent. And this was also already touched on by Loes in her presentation when she mentioned the UVAR system, which is another topic that goes to all transport, but also to exceptional transport. We see already that most cities have their own system of allowing vehicles into the city center or banning them from the city center. And this leads to a huge amount of different application systems and permitting systems. And I think this is something we should avoid. So yes, there is an opportunity in intelligent access, but only if we can get our policymakers to, say, align their wishes and come to a common harmonized system throughout Europe. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ton. Other views, maybe also from Roger?
I can add something if you like, Martin. Andrew Rossington.
Yes.
I think to specifically sort of answer your question as well, whether it's around historical, access requirements, not just new. I think there's also a great opportunity for looking at specific programs. So, there was one that was done locally here in Australia and Queensland around the Port of Brisbane, high productivity route between a major transport hub and the ports, looked at 50%, uplift in, capacity or productivity on a vehicle for, reality is for very, very little cost, and utilised various different pieces of technology from Way in Motion, which Roger will happily talk about, and and the framework of the IAP. So I think it's also very adaptable. I think that's probably a key point here, that the IAP is very adaptable, or the framework of IAP is adaptable to other programs as well.
Thank you, Andrew. Probably also Roger, you can give us your view on that. Is Roger there? Seems not to be the case. Then a second question, can the implementation only succeed by making it mandatory? Because otherwise transport companies are never willing to share data, or would intelligent access also work on a voluntary basis? What is your view on that? Who wants to answer?
Well, I'll start on that one, I think, Martin. I think it's about the benefits, and that's just the reality of what a commercial transport operator will be looking for. So if programs are voluntary, and we've seen a mixture of regulated and voluntary programs, and the take-up rate is very good on voluntary programs if the outcomes are there, and it's all outcome based. I think we're seeing a lot more of an appetite from operators to start sharing data where they see an outcome. So if they see better access, let's say wider access, different vehicle types, routes that are more efficient for them, etc., they will jump on board. They're a business, and that's what they want to do. They want to make money. So we have seen now, we've been at this, as Gavin said, since 2008, with the IAP in Australia, and back then you would see a lot of pushback. But I think as people have seen the benefits, they're starting to push for more outcomes and more programs. So I think it's going the opposite way. I think there's a very strong appetite for these programs.
Thank you, Andrew. Other views, perspectives? Maybe Ton, yes?
Yeah, I'm just on this meeting now, if I can get through. If I can get to hear them. I can't hear them.
Somebody's from Australia. Yeah.
We can hear you, Roger.
Anyway, I'd like to hook into what Andrew said. I think mandatory is, of course, a way of doing it, getting mandatory programs, but that will also lead to a lot of pushbacks, especially from transport operators. I think if you make it mandatory, I think the proper way is to make them see the benefits and make sure that there are benefits for people who are in the program and complying with the program, because like we say here, you always get more people forward with a sausage than with a stick. So it's better to try and show people what the benefits will be, the mutual benefits. And there are, I think, undoubtedly mutual benefits in the use of intelligent access. But I would prefer that to having a mandatory system. Mandatory means repression, means enforcement. There's a lot of negative energy. So showing the benefits to me is always preferable.
And Martin, I'd like to back up Ton's comments there from an Australian perspective. What we've learned over the last 10 years is that perhaps mandatory does seem a little bit harsh, a little bit archaic. The terminology is not subtle. What we have seen is the third-party logistics providers coming into play. For example, the large supermarkets, the large timber manufacturers, the large container transport operators coming in and saying, if you have this system, I will give you a better rate. And once our transport operators can get a return of an investment on this opportunity, we turn intelligent access into a revenue-making system rather than an expense to industry. And that is the biggest lesson that I personally have learned from selling intelligent access for 13 years, when we can help our transport operators make a profit from this system, do it safely, do it compliantly, but all the parties in the chain are understanding of what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. It's Roger, maybe there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Roger.
Thanks for showing you. If I just might jump in, Anthony, I agree with you 100%. It's been exactly that way. Under the SOLAS updates a few years ago, safety of lives at sea, you have to have verified gross mass of containers. And where people are picking up loaded containers from various businesses, unless they have a weighing system there, the operator can't weigh. So onboard scales have been rising in popularity, particularly those which have compatibility, like we have with Teletrack Navman, where you can get container IDs, you can get date, time, and they get a better turnaround, because I don't know how far ports are from weighbridges or businesses are from weighbridges, but just on the container shipping line, you have to have verified gross mass. Otherwise, they will turn back the container at the gate. And so an operator driving in 1 hour to a weighbridge and then back again to unload the container really, really messes up their day. So the incentives are there, a huge increase in productivity. The A-double project in Brisbane reduced the amount of vehicles on the road by 50%. And TCR got a wonderful story about all that, and it's a fact. The Port of Brisbane increased TEU input by 17% a year over the last 4 years. So the incentives are there. Don't make it mandatory, just make it, incentivize it with higher mass limits and give the operators a real return on the investment.
And Roger, we've never had a customer leave the program once they've entered. That's your understanding? Not one, not a single one.
That's a good sign, no?
Yeah.
They're making money. Look, it's really this simple. On an A-double, for instance, where you've got 40 ton of load, 10% rule of thumb is the profit, okay? So you allow the operator to carry 44 ton over 4 axle groups. He's made a 100% increase in his profit on that trip and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. They can actually run 10 vehicles instead of 11. So reduce your carbon emissions. Guys, I'm very much a fan of HML, IAP, PBS, as you may have gathered already, but it works. It really works.
Thank you, Roger.
You're welcome.
So I would like to go on with the second topic in the first panel. And this is about the extent to which stakeholders are ready to introduce some form of intelligent access. And the question to the panelists is, are we ready for intelligent access applications regarding in-house knowledge and accessibility for the transport companies? What is your view on that? Who wants to start this question?
Okay, I'll jump in again if you don't
Okay,
mind.
yes, Roger, please go ahead.
You are ready. The technology that we have in our motor vehicles, most of the motor vehicles in Australia, is European. Scania, Volvo, you name it. Okay, they're the heavy truck field. Kenworth, of course, and they use the same sort of technology. So what you really have to do is understand that we have the technology. The route is, are you ready for it? I think you're more than ready for it. And you have the capability. Not only that, you have a much higher population density than we will ever have in Australia. And once the operators realize the benefits from the technology, and remember, it's a common platform. Artificial intelligence does a lot with your data. You can share it on a common platform. Australia's moving towards mass distance location charges. So, yeah, I think you guys are ready. I really do.
Thank you, Richard.
I'd probably add to what Roger's saying there. Also, and I think probably, again, talk about objections that people have had historically around technology. Oh, it's too expensive, it's too difficult, it's too hard. The reality is we're talking about the same technology that is being deployed for other services, around the globe. So I think, again, a lot of those arguments are falling away now because people are realizing that this is actually productivity gains, this is profit gains, this is the ability to win business as well. And I think we're seeing more and more of that. And it is a relatively decreasing cost in technology that people are going through at the moment. The costs are actually coming down on technology. Probably the only thing in the world that's coming down in price at the moment, but at this point in time, that's what's happening. So the deployment is much easier, the use is wide, and people have it and are ready for it. And as I said, people are winning business off this now, and I think that's the big turnaround as well.
And are there standardization issues or compatibility issues regarding technologies?
I think the world is always becoming far better integrated. I think it's a very, sort of broad answer at the moment. So I think, Gavin, who was talking before, could talk a lot about the early days of IAP and, in reality, it was a little bit of a closed shop, closed system. And that's changed over the last couple of years. And again, going back to Gavin's, presentation, we talked about reforms, not only in law, but there's been reforms in the programs, which have meant reforms in the way the technology is deployed. So again, that problem is more one of the past than it is going one going forward.
I think if I may make a remark here, I think technology is not the problem here. I think, at least from a European perspective, the problem is much more political than it is technological. Because I think the biggest hurdle will be to accept people, to have people accept this system on a Euro-based scale. And that's the real challenge, I think. If I hear this kind of developments and I see the presentation of Ms. Aarts, which was very good, I think, I see the emphasis it puts, for instance, on privacy protection, which is a topic in Germany, I know, and a topic in Holland. And these are big hurdles to take, far more than the technological aspect of things. I think the technology, like you say, Andrew, it's all European-based vehicles that are worldwide used. So the technology is not the problem. The transport companies' adoption is not the big problem. I think the big problem is with the policymakers and the governments that have to regulate this. At least is my impression at this point in time.
So you think
Tom, sorry, Martin.
Yeah, so it's easier to implement it in Australia because it's one country, or in Europe probably more difficult.
Yes.
Yeah, right. You should. Sorry, Martin. You should come to some of our meetings with the government representatives.
Roger, but at least you all speak the same language. We also have 26 languages I have to deal with.
Yeah, well, that is a problem. I'm not diminishing your problem. I'm just saying we've got the same numbers, but the magnitude varies.
I know. I've had the same discussion in the crane licensing problem with the guys from Canada. If you look from a European perspective into Canada, we think it's one big country, but in fact, they all have their own states and they all have their own regulations. So we all struggle with the same problems, I think.
I think a lot of the objections, Martin, just to add one more little point here, the objections, and again, you know, coming from doing this over so many years, a lot of the objections you see are not from the operators who want to comply, who want to do a good job, who want to get better productivity. This is about a lot of the objections come from people that don't want to. So they don't want to spend the money because they don't want to be compliant in reality. And obviously, you know, to your point, Tom, crossing borders in Europe, you know, has a whole bunch of challenges, and you know, there's lots of issues going on there around that. So there's a lot of people that don't want to comply. So you know, if that's where you want us, if we could say where the loudest voices come from, that's where the loudest voices come from.
Okay, so what are the main barriers, or also what are the success factors from your point of view for the implementation? What are the main issues to be solved? We heard before political issues.
I think it's gaining agreement and trying to get synergy potentially across countries and across states, across borders, and trying to get a level of synergy, not on the technology and not on the, you know, on any of those aspects that we've talked about. It's the ability to, you know, potentially try and get some common outcomes across boundaries or borders. I think that lends itself, you know, and, you know, we might have been joking, Roger might have been joking before, but in some ways he wasn't, because, you know, we've got 6 or so states to deal with, but you still have the independent states. So I think that has been a challenge here. How do you get all of the states to agree to offend, you know, something that's done on a national level? So that's certainly a challenge.
Andrew's spot on, Martin. Just and to our colleagues, if we demonstrate a return on investment to transport operators, these guys are smart people. They will look towards a system which returns on investment. What I learned from my experience in Australia, when government and the technology sector were not on the same message, that was a problem. So if there was one piece I could say that I learned, and both Andrew and Roger and myself and Gavin all learned from, was when we weren't all on message. What are we trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve better roads, more efficiency, better productivity, less fuel emissions, better CO2 outcomes, which we've all achieved, by the way, but our message was not clear. Once our messaging is clear, I think you'll be able to take care of the 90% of people that Andrew refers to that want to do the right thing, not the 10% that will probably never get to do the right thing.
Thank you, Anthony.
And Anthony are right. Yeah, I'm sorry.
So you want to react to that, Roger?
Yeah, of course, Martin, if I may. Absolutely correct. And the thing that what really got going was that the large transport companies worked with the governments, and then all of a sudden the message became uniform across all states. But what was also driving the uniformity and the sudden progress that we've experienced in the last 18 months, 2 years, is the fact that they established a national heavy vehicle regulator whose brief was to look at uniform rules, regulations, weight limits on vehicles, speed limits, width, length, height. And that has driven a uniformity through the road transport industry. Now, I know you guys have got lots of challenges in that, but I think if you look at the major fleets in each country, and they push it with the government, you'll have a much better uptake more quickly. But also, if you guys form an EU national heavy vehicle regulator, you'll really have a much better chance at having a voice. That's what TCA has done in Australia. TCA was the voice.
Well, we have a European directive on this, which is presently under review. So I hope that this might drive it into the right direction, Roger, because I see your point.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I think we come to an end for the first panel. So thank you very much, Roger. Thank you very much, Anthony, Andrew, and Ton, for your interesting contributions. And we can go on with the second panel. In the second panel, we will discuss about the benefits and also the conditions for trust. And the panelists are Ance Globokar from Slovenia, then Gavin Hill from Australia, Marcel Lotto from the Netherlands, and Ifet Turken from Europe, representing ESTA and also the vehicle manufacturers. Welcome. So again, short statements, short answers are very welcome to cover more topics and more views. The first topic is about the benefits of implementing intelligent access for the stakeholders involved. So identifying the benefits can remove resistance and ensure a more open attitude from stakeholders. So my first questions to you is, what are the main benefits of implementing intelligent access from your perspective? Who would like to start?
I'm happy to go first, Martin.
Yeah, Gavin, go ahead. Yes, thanks.
Can I make a statement by just saying it's the transport industry and service providers like Teletrack Navman and Roger from Tremanco, who are often the ones that are coming forward with proposals to government, to TCA, to say, if we could use intelligent access this way, there would be a benefit to us as a transport operator or as an industry sector. And I just think this changes the paradigm in terms of the relationship that exists between government and the transport sector. Intelligent access gives the industry a new tool to negotiate with government with. And I think it's a really important message, because sometimes we get stuck in a conversation that's about how can governments use intelligent access. It's equally in the other direction. And I think that's a really powerful dimension that comes with Australia's experience. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you very much. Gavin, further views? Maybe from Ance, or who wants to speak next? Or Marcel? Okay.
Yes, please. So what, for example, in the Netherlands is important that from the, sorry, my voice is disturbing me. So from the, in the Netherlands, what is important that for the road authorities, we have a problem of increased use for freight transport and also more heavy transport, and the state of our infrastructure is at age. So we have to manage our infrastructure and our traffic in a better way regarding the increased risks. So that's the main benefit for the public authorities, to have real insight and more dynamic control on the most critical uses of our infrastructure. So this is one from the authority perspective, and from the companies, it's to ensure a level playing field So that's the real driver for companies who participate in our pilot. They want a level playing field. They want to be accountable what they do, and show also to their customers, look, we're compliant with all the regulation, but also to show, for example, what are their CO2 emissions for a trip. So these are the most important benefits.
Thank you very much, Marcel. Who would like to speak next?
Maybe, yeah, Martin.
Yes.
I would like to take over from Marcel about the CO2, because while the pandemic has been the main topic of conversation for the past 2 years, we cannot afford to lose sight of the bigger picture. Climate change remains the biggest issue facing society. And actually, we don't have so much time to lose on making environmental progress. So having said that, I would like to base it on the reality that the transport sector creates approximately 25% of the total CO2 emissions. And on the other hand, the transport of freight will increase 45% by 2040. Huh? So this is the real challenge. And I think what Marcel said on the national level, but also on the European level, and I would bring also my experience in this European Commission funded project. So the aim is to bring and bundle this impact of high capacity transportation, where we need to create some new forms of vehicles, systems, loading units, but also intelligent access policies, and bring these concepts. And at the end of the day, we need to bring it into the attention of not only on the national level, but on the European level, because in Europe, we have the goals of the Green Deal and safety goals of Vision Zero 2050. So I think this would be the playground on the European level. We need to keep it at the top of it and bring it not only on the national level, but on the international level. So this is how I would like to show the benefits. There is the realities and there is the needs for the future. One need is there will be more freight, and the other one is we need to bring the CO2 emissions less. And then there is the legislation which says less 30% in 2030, and that vehicle manufacturers are more or less ready working on it, but we need to bring this impact on the users, keep telling them on the legislation makers, and we need to use the European level to be able to express that. And I think it's extremely important here at this stage, we are able to bring it onto the focus, and because it creates, first of all, an understanding and awareness. And I think seeing all these best practices all around the world is extremely useful for us on the European level to bring it also and frame it and express it. What are the good best cases which are already in use in North America, South America, Australia, and such that. Yeah?
Thank you. If it probably Ante, you want to?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your words. So yeah, you said I'm come from Slovenia. Slovenia is a member of Eurocontrol Route, which is an association of authorities who perform roadworthiness checks at the roadside or social legislation. So I can tell you from my point of view as a road transport inspector, this data would be, let's say, definitely interesting for me in, let's say, making a pre-selection of vehicles at the roadside checks. And then definitely an added value that I can see would be also then, let's say, to confirm the data that I'm entitled to look, let's say like tachograph data, you know, and let's say doing these cross checks with other data. I would use this to confirm that the tachograph, let's say, is not manipulated. Yeah, so that this data that I am entitled to see, so the tachograph data is not falsified, concealed, or in somehow manipulated. Yeah, so let's say this is what I see here as a benefit of this. All this data that is gathered, yeah, but as it was mentioned before, then this is a problem maybe with our jurisdiction and authority, you know, how much will we be able to see in that, and also how much the stakeholders, so the carriers would be happy about us looking into this data. Yeah.
So it's beneficial for you, more efficiency. Is it also beneficial then for the transport companies? It's easier also for them then, more efficiency for them?
Well, you know, if I mean, let's say I'm having experience now with the smart tachograph, yeah, which is also some kind of, so it's also transmitting data, long distance data.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at that parameters, we can already make a pre-selection, which means if these parameters are okay, we won't stop that vehicle. Yeah. If these parameters are not okay, then there's a high, it's a possibility that we will stop that vehicle at the roadside check. Yeah. So what I wanted to say, if you're okay and you're transmitting this data that are okay, then it's possibility that we won't stop you. Yeah. If you're doing it wrongly, yeah, which also means this is, I think, also like dumping, yeah, or how should I say? So you're not playing by the rules, which I think is also not in the carrier sector interest, yeah, then it's a high possibility that we will stop you and check you, yeah, furthermore, yeah. And this, again, I would really appreciate having all other data, let's say from the tooling system, from any other stuff that is gathered, you know, also way in motion, so that I could check it, you know, and cross-check it with the tachograph data. And if somebody is manipulating, you know, usually we are seeing, if we're cross-checking the data, usually something comes out, yeah. Mm-hmm. Because you know, cannot manipulate all the data, if you know what I mean, you know.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Martin, can I just add to that comment?
Sure.
It's a really important point, and Andrew Rosington also mentioned this during the previous session. But intelligent access helps regulators to better target their limited resources. It's a really important dimension that's often overlooked. It's one of the benefits that's embedded in the way that compliance is managed. Now, not every use of intelligent access has a regulatory or compliance dimension, but where it does, you're more able to wave through vehicles at safety stations or checking stations if you know that they're being monitored remotely. And likewise, you know, if you've got, you know, a fixed number of men or women on the ground doing enforcement, then you want to target their efforts into the ones that aren't in intelligent access. And this is an important part of the value proposition that we've been able to introduce with road agencies and regulators in Australia. And it shouldn't be overlooked, because not only is it a benefit to regulators so they can better target their resources, but if it means that you're a transport operator and you're not going to be waved into a safety station, then that's a good thing. That helps you as a business.
Thank you, Gavin. Yes,
maybe
please.
In addition to that, what Mr. Gavin told us, maybe just an interesting data. I think in 2019, they made a short overview of the roadside checks that we did and the infringement that we found, and 75% were okay. Yeah. So only 25% were problematic or resulted somehow some kind of infringement. Yeah. Which, as I said, and in addition to that, what it was said, we could really use some good pre-selection tool or targeting tool, you know, that would help us. Let's say that we would really deal on the roadside checks. We would really deal with problematic ones. Yeah. Not with the 75% of the good ones. Yeah. So definitely it's an interest as a road transport inspector. Yeah.
Thank you. And there are some benefits which are clear, like safety improvements, efficiency improvements, environmental issues. Are there also maybe some benefits which are not seen from the first sight, probably new business opportunities and things like that? Who would like to react on this question? So what could be further benefits, probably not be seen in the first sight, but for private companies could be very interesting?
Martin, I would say that we're moving into, you know, version 2 of what we mean by intelligent access, at least here in Australia. And so typically it's intelligent access has been focused on the data that's generated from a vehicle. But now we're moving to a world where we're talking about data being pushed into a vehicle to assist drivers to better schedule their journeys, to avoid congestion, to better schedule their rest breaks. And even when it comes to restricted access, where, you know, in a world of performance-based standards vehicles, you could have a scenario where every vehicle has a subtly different set of permissions in terms of where it can go on the network. We're moving to a space where regulated turn-by-turn guidance for drivers is now being incorporated into an intelligent access. So I think this sort of bi-directional flow of data into and out of vehicles is really critical. The point I'm making, though, is we're in 2022 now. We're not talking about retrofitting technologies or telematics devices into vehicles anymore. We're talking about vehicles that are rolling off the production line with these systems embedded. And that means issues about cost and barriers to entry aren't what they were 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. And once you have a latent capability across the vehicle fleet, then there are new opportunities that governments can take advantage of. But if you're a transport operator or driver, and you've got a telematics system that's in your new Volvo or Scania, and Teletrack Navman can connect to it, then there's a whole range of opportunities for that driver and transport operator to do more with that technology and to leverage its capabilities.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gavin. So I come now to the second topic. So it's about the way in which trust can be created within the system. The question is, how can we provide suitable framework conditions for trust, which means fulfilling requirements to guarantee privacy and security? So what is, in your opinion, important to really guarantee privacy and security? What is key? Who would like to answer first?
I'm not sure if I know the answer, but I can say it like this. I was mentioning before that, so using this as a pre-selection tool, you know, and that all this data is being erased, I don't find this as a problem. But maybe what would be also interesting for me is then using this data in, as you know, we have an inspection. We are the inspecting authority, which means we monitor the compliance with the regulations, and then also if there's an infringement, we do the sanctioning procedure, or how should I say, the penalty procedure, the criminal procedure maybe also, yeah. So maybe what would be interesting for this equipment also is that it should be certified, or I don't know the term, so that it could be also
certified.
Used by the court of law. Yeah, so this should be maybe also used by the court of law, you know. So this is maybe from my point of view, what should be the demands for using this equipment also in the court of law. And this would be useful for us, yeah, definitely.
So you use certified systems for data handling and processing, so you're sure that security can be guaranteed?
I mean, I don't know. I hope it must be, so that I can use it as an evidence, you know, in the court of law, let's say, you know. But as I said, I'm on the other side, let's say, usually on this issue with the carriers, you know, if you know what I mean.
Well, I can step in. My experience is that it's very important to start this discussion about what is the data or information used for. What is it? Who needs what kind of part of the data or information, and what's the legal base for this? So you really need to take time to discuss this with all stakeholders before you go into, let's say, making agreements on specific systems or services. This takes time, and also you need to include people who don't know much about logistics, so like privacy advisors or security experts. They are not very they're distant from the logistics chain, so you really need time to sit together and to understand how the data flow is processed and who has which role. So that's the important, I think.
Thank you, Marcel. Then Yvette, please.
Well, like Gavin said, necessity is the mother of innovation. So we are at the stage of necessity. And I think right now within this webinar, we are bringing into the awareness and understanding and to make it international level. And in Europe, I think to see it from the European level, to make all these necessities, first of all, we need to create a safe space. The professor Amy Edmondson calls it the psychological safety. This is where the innovation can take place. This is an atmosphere where we can speak the truth and openly express our views, not only from one side of stakeholder side or from the national side, but from the whole European side. So I think it's very important to create this. And what I want to say is we need some safe space, and metaphorically, Loes has been part of in the sounding board of the European project Airflex. And this, we were able to create a sounding board, which was first over 25 stakeholders, and then it became 70 stakeholders in Europe, meaning users, regulators, experts, governments, and DigiMu came, and we were able to create a space where we could all talk about the needs of the different sides. So I think we need a continuation, we need a backup of the European Commission, and this Horizon 2020 research and innovation programs shall be a continuation of this safe space where all of us can come together and create not only the regulation, but also the expression of all these ins and outs of it. So this could be a good start point. So a good safe space we should create, and a collaboration where we take the responsibility of this collaboration. So this means, and I would like to thank the CEDR and PIARC to organize this, because it is a very important step to bring us together. So thank you.
Thank you, Yvette. Probably Gavin, you want also give your perspective on that?
Yeah, look, I couldn't agree more with everything that's been said. I mean, privacy is central to this whole concept of intelligent access. When we embarked on this journey back in the early 2000s, one of the first things that we did as a country was get our privacy commissioners on board as part of this reform. It's a little known fact that Australia has really stringent privacy laws, amongst the toughest in the world. We also have really strong workplace surveillance laws in this country, and a truck is a workplace for a driver. So we had to build in privacy by design principles into the intelligent access program from the very beginning. And while our legislative framework will be different to other regions, a key principle of intelligent access and the collection of data for any means in this country is based on positive consent. So if your data is being collected as an individual or as a business owner through your vehicle, then there needs to be a consent mechanism which transparently describes what data is being collected and for what purpose. And just as importantly, what purposes it can't be used for. These are built into every aspect that TCA manages with technology providers. And I'll say one other thing, because this deserves a whole session on its own, because there's so many threads to this. But one of the key institutional safeguards that was introduced for intelligent access in Australia was the very establishment of Transport Certification Australia. We are a safe harbour for data to be aggregated and managed. So we're not a road agency, we're not a regulator, we're not a technology provider, we're an arm of government with strong government oversight. And so there is a very strong trust equation by the very fact, not just that there's really strong laws and consent mechanisms and legal agreements with everyone that's involved, but that TCA is the holder at the end of the day of all data that's collected from vehicles into. And then we have controls around who can access what and under what circumstances. I can't tell you how important that institutional design is to convey trust and safety when it comes to data through the transport sector.
Thanks very much, Gavin. So we are at the end of the second panel round. So thank you very much, Antje, Gavin, and Marcel, and Ifet, for your very interesting contributions. And with this, I give back to Konstantinos for closing the session.
Yes, thank you very much, Martin. Thank you all for this very interesting panel discussion. I will myself give immediately the floor to our colleague Thomas Asp from Trafikverket to close this event, summarize the event, and also guide us through possible next steps with regards to intelligent access. So Thomas, now I will give the floor to you. So over to you, and thank you very much, Martin and colleagues.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, my name is Thomas Asp, and I'm working, as you said, at Trafikverket in Sweden, and I also share the CEDR working group about road freight transport together with Loes Aarts. And first I will say a big and warm thank you to all participants for listening and sending in questions, for panel members for taking part in interesting and giving us interesting discussions, and of course for presenters for preparing very nice and interesting presentations. And all the presentation material will be made available to all participants within 1 week, and we will be back with information about that. Next slide, please. And as we said in the beginning of this webinar, we plan to have a new one that we will use these ideas from this meeting to be able to take the next steps in using possibilities with intelligent access. So do not hesitate to reach out to us for questions, thoughts, or any collaboration ideas that we can use both for this next webinar, but also, of course, in ongoing work in both CEDR and PIARC. Please take the last slide. And here you have mail addresses for both Loes and I, and also to Olivier at PIARC, so you can send ideas. And at last, I will say thanks again for your attention, and we hope that you will all be interested in taking part also in our planned webinar next autumn. So thanks a lot, and we think it has been a good webinar. So I don't know.
Thank you, Thomas.
Yeah.
Thank you.